Hey, how you doing, guys? Hopefully you had a wonderful Christmas, and this is New Year's Eve, so Happy New Year if you have that coming up as well. Had a great time. Um, and before I go into the topic, I did get this nifty little Zune Smooth 4 gimbal that we're going to be using with the new LG V30 Plus. You can take some real cool video with this over the coming weeks. We're going to let you know how it goes, and using the Filmic Pro integration is wonderful with the Smooth 4. So that's going to be coming up in quite a few weeks. I've just been so busy with other things, Christmas and New Year's, and haven't had time to do as many videos, I guess. Okay, let's go on to a question from a viewer. This has to do with my AMD Threadripper that came out during that time, and this question and statement came from the Hit Brainiac, and he said, I had the worst experience since I upgraded, thinking this was going to help me and my workflow. It actually slowed me down greatly. And then he goes on to tell me in the comment section, we kind of talk back and forth because I was interested in what's happening with this, and as far as video editing and perhaps some other applications. Now, he also upgraded from Intel 6 core. I'm not going to go into specifics here, but to a AMD Threadripper 16 core. And also he upgraded the RAM from 16 to 64 gigabytes. I think he mentioned a couple other things. Maybe he was using SSD drive. So I'm going to kind of give you my thoughts, and I've been kind of looking around to see maybe what happened or what's going on, and it's really not an easy answer all the time. But now keep in mind, I primarily use some Mac Pros in Final Cut Pro 10 and maybe even DaVinci Resolve. So I'm not that familiar with Premiere Pro on the PC side of things, but I'm going to tell you some of the things that I've found out. Now, if you take a look at something like, this is one aspect of it. Of course, I've talked about this in length with CPU cores, which is Amdahl's law, stating that anytime you use more cores, you'll tend to have a diminishing rate of return the more cores you add. So I'll give an example. Let's say you go from 16 to 32. You would think that you would gain 100% or even 50% performance increase, and not necessarily so. You'll actually see over the more cores you add, it'll actually go down. So you may only get 30, 20, or even 10% increase in performance, and that's due to Amdahl's law. Now, considering he goes from a 6 core to 16 core, I don't think that Amdahl's law would affect it in any great way. Usually it's more on the higher core counts. I think he should see a fairly drastic increase in performance. But once you start getting to 32, 64, then it doesn't really make it worth it due to just that. Okay, let's look also going from Intel to AMD. Now, if you're doing something like final export render, where you're done with the video, you're rendering it out, in many cases, Intel is going to be often the best to use if export speed is the most important to you, simply because even now, most video editors support QuickSync. Of course, QuickSync is Intel's hardware acceleration for export of video. Of course, you are limited to H.264 at MP4. Anything other than, in single pass, not multi-pass. So anything other than that, you don't get any benefits from QuickSync. Now, I do realize he mostly talked about timeline slowdowns or timeline performance, probably as he's editing the video, so that wouldn't take into account QuickSync. Now, I think perhaps Premiere Pro might be better written for Intel versus AMD, but of course, like I said, I don't know Premiere Pro intimately, and as far as going into the hardware, software, and driver side of things. Now, also, you really got to keep in mind that just because you get, new equipment, if it's actually going to be more beneficial, it'll actually speed up your workflow. You also have to think about software optimization. You may, get more cores, but you have to look at the software application you'll be using this with to see if it is encoded to use the best for the GPU or multiple core. If it is not, then you won't necessarily get anything faster. So you need to think that as well. And I think in the past, the Premiere Pro wasn't necessarily the greatest in multi-core performance. It might be different now, I'm not sure. And this even goes into the NLEs or your video editor of choice. Possibly plugins and effects might be affected by multi-core and or the GPU if it supports it. So that's another thing you really need to think about. Also, you have to think about is, more than likely, I'm guessing this is a build-it-yourself computer. So you have to think of, are the individual parts, the intercompatibility between all the hardware, software drivers, operating system, and even the NLE, in this case, Premiere Pro. You could possibly be getting some problems from that. Now, looking on the internet, different problem or reasons, I've actually found in a couple of cases where Threadripper actually increased performance for many people in Premiere Pro. And I even found, this is a system builder, which is Puget Systems. And they have a couple of articles on this as well as kind of seeing if Threadripper is working in Premiere Pro and compared to even Intel CPUs. And they pretty much found out that in some cases, the Threadripper was actually more faster. For instance, Red Code Raw or Raw Red for Red cameras was actually faster than Intel. In some cases, the Intel beat out the Threadripper. We should at least see something very similar, at least in speed. And I think with After Effects, we didn't see much performance enhancement, considering After Effects is probably in a bad need of updating, rewriting, I think, as well. So I would recommend testing your system performance and other things as well. I mean, anytime you add more cores, even if the software isn't written for multi-core, it should at least be faster in multitasking, which means like opening up several different applications at the same time. You should see faster performance in that. For instance, web browsing with Google Chrome, you should see increased response because each tab on a Chrome browser, it's gonna use an extra core, which would help you in web browsing, for instance. Now, if you're seeing a reduce in performance overall using the new CPO, then there is a problem if you're seeing system-wide slowdown. Now, I suggest maybe using a different NLE video editor. For instance, you could try using DaVinci Resolve free version and download that and see if you have the same problems in the timeline. And if you're seeing an increase in performance, much more than Premiere Pro, then there's probably a problem with Premiere Pro supporting multi-cores or something, or that much. And if you're seeing the same slowdown in DaVinci Resolve, then that's kind of telling me perhaps you need to look problem with the computer. Could be software, drivers, hardware incompatibilities, and so on. And even the Puget Puget Systems even said adding a whole lot of cores in some cases may even slow down a lot of applications as well. So it all depends. So thanks for the response and question. I thought it was a very interesting topic. So see you guys later, and have a happy New Year's.